Welcome back, everybody. Top 4 is upon us. I am Costa, joined by Jamie Boy, and we are here for Victory Road, paired with GG Tour, Series 12 Challenge. And this is it. This is the top 4, Jamie. Are we feeling good? We're going to see some teams that we've seen before, or should I say the past 2 streams, at least one of them, as we are going to be seeing Kyle Geffner versus Paul Ruiz.
Yeah, it should be it. This is going to be a fantastic game. Yes, we're going to feature 2 fantastic players that have managed to reach the semi-finals as well. Of course, like we said in the previous round as well, we do have limited amount of capture cards, but at least we do have guaranteed capture cards in both the semi-finals and the final. So we will be able to bring you both the semi-finals and the final match as well, which we are very excited about. And we are going to be featuring again Kyle Geffner, because Kyle does have access to that capture card. We will be featuring them against Paul Ruiz, and it's going to be definitely an interesting matchup here. It's going to be Zacian and Kyogre coming out for Paul Ruiz against that Calyrex and Groudon, the unexpected pair that is doing so well.
Yeah, and I feel like akin to, I believe, 2 rounds ago, we may be seeing that Gastrodon making an appearance yet again from Kyle's side, because why wouldn't it? It's going up against a similar structure core to what we had seen in the top 16 stage, as Zacian and Kyogre, they don't exactly have a fun time versus Gastrodon.
There is a Ferrothorn there on Paul's side of the field, since it does have Body Press and Iron Defense, but it does not have Leech Seed. It does actually carry Power Whip instead, so the Gastrodon would need to be concerned about the Power Whip that could come out from the opposing Ferrothorn. Zapdos would still do pretty well as well. It would do even better than the previous one did. The previous Zapdos in the top 16 match was a Safety Goggles variant. This is a Life Orb Zapdos. This is going to do a significantly bigger chunk of damage with any Airstreams that would want to come out into the opposing Gastrodon. So it does need to be wary of that. I definitely wouldn't be surprised if we do see the Gastrodon still coming to the match for Kyle's side of the field, even though there is the Power Whip on the Ferrothorn as well. You've got plenty of other Pokemon that can deal with it, so maybe the Ferrothorn doesn't even come to the match, because it does have to contend with the opposing Charizard and the Incineroar and the Will-O-Wisp that can come out from the opposing Calyrex, and you can't Body Press the Calyrex either, so maybe feeling a bit more safe to bring the Gastrodon. Just really needs to be concerned about the Zapdos as well. But this Zacian is carrying Play Rough, so that would be able to hit the Gastrodon a lot better than the other Zacian that went up against it would have been able to. That is a crucial coverage move on Zacian and Kyogre teams. Play Rough hits a lot of Pokemon that Kyogre does not want to be going up against. The Gastrodon is definitely one of them, so the Zacian is much more viable to come to this match than the previous one. That means you get access to both of your restrictors at this point. I also wouldn't be surprised if we see the Zapdos as well. The Zapdos would be a very good Dynamax Pokemon going into this match. Going for all those Airstreams, especially with the Life Orb, is going to be doing a lot of damage.
Yeah, and it makes a lot of sense, because Zapdos is very, very good as a Pokemon choice. It has that access to max Airstreams, which could go ahead and act as a sort of form of manual speed control, if you may, for both the Pokemon using the attack and its partner. But we've got the leads out, ladies and gents. We see Paul's side, Whimsicott, and that Zacian. Whilst over on Kyle's side, we have the Thundurus, Incarnate, and the Groudon.
Yeah, this one's definitely a tricky lead for both players. The Whimsicott does have access to Taunt. You can just go for a Taunt into the opposing Thundurus and stop any of the opposing Taunts and Thunderwaves that can be coming out as well. And it would only be able to go for a Thunderbolt for some chip damage into the opposing Zacian. But then the Groudon is definitely threatening down the Zacian very heavily as well. So you get some good damage with Behemoth Blades. You could switch into the Zapdos potentially to be able to take the Precipice Blades, and that would be a very viable switch in, especially if you taunt the Thundurus to put a stop to any of the Eerie Impulses that could be coming out as well. So still a little bit tricky for both the players. The Thundurus isn't really where it wants to be against the Taunt Whimsicott that come out. The Zacian isn't really where it wants to be, facing down the Groudon immediately. So it is going to be switching out here. And I wouldn't be surprised if we see the Zapdos join the field, because it is immune to that Precipice Blades.
There it is, and it makes a lot of sense. A very, very good, solid play to make there. Taunt does come out from that Whimsicott, goes into the Thundurus. Of course, this is open team sheet, so each of the trainers are completely aware of the moves of all of the Pokemon of their opponents. Precipice Blades does come out, does connect with that Whimsicott, and it is able to deal relatively good chip damage there. But at this point, Thundurus is in an awkward spot. It can't go ahead and use any sort of status type moves, whilst it can just go ahead and maybe get a Thunderbolt off. But Paul all of a sudden does have some good situations going on for himself.
Yeah, that's a really good position for Paul now. Thunderbolt would have been able to break a focus sash on the Whimsicott, but the Precipice Laser's done that, so the Thunderous is not very useful at the moment. The Thunderbolt into a Dynamax Zapdos wouldn't do too much damage at all. There's nothing really stopping the Zapdos from just going for the Dynamax now and start launching off those Airstreams. If it goes for a helping hand with the Whimsicott as well, that will probably be able to pick up the knockout on the opposing Groudon as well, if it doesn't opt for the Protect there. But the Zapdos is going to be protecting itself here, maybe anticipating the Protect that come out from the opposing Groudon, but no, that's not coming out here, but the Whimsicott's going in the offensive at least.
Interesting, as it does deal very good damage onto that Groudon. Thunderbolt trying to go ahead and whittle down that Whimsicott's HP that tiny bit more. Rock Slide, of course, is met with that Zapdos's Protect, but it does connect with the Whimsicott and goes ahead and picks up that KO as well. So Whimsicott all of a sudden is down for the count. There's no Tailwind set up on Paul's side, but then again, is there really a need for it to be in this current situation?
There wouldn't be if you just go for the Airstream with the Zapdos, then you're just going to get the speed advantage regardless, and you still got the opportunity to go for that. There's no Area Impulse that can come out from the Thunderous, at least for this last turn, before the taunt would start to wear off, and you do need to KO that Thunderous to put a stop to that, and also the Thunder Waves that can come out from the Zacian as well. But this definitely could be an opportunity to go for the Kyogre switch in, because then the Zapdos, you would assume that it's going to outspeed a support Thunderous. Usually the Life Orb Zapdos are run as fast as possible, and the Thunderous are not run very fast at all, so you can just go for an Airstream and a Water Spout very freely, especially because the Thunderous is taunted. It will just have to eat up that Water Spout, but no, it's actually going to be the Zacian switching in here instead, so you would probably need to commit a double up into the Thunderous to be able to pick up the knockout with a Play Rough and whatever the attack with the Zapdos would want to go for. It's a little bit surprising not to see the Kyogre there. That would have been a very good opportunity to go for that. Even if it was fearing the Gastron that could switch in, you'd still be able to get some very good damage into the Pokemon that did not switch in. And the Airstream, if it landed into that Gastron switch in, would have been very good. So a little bit surprising to see the Zacian here. Maybe it's confident that the Groudon is in range of a Behemoth Blade at this point. You could just be going for an Airstream, and that should be able to pick up the knockout on the Groudon at this point with that extra chip damage that came out from the Moonblast earlier from the Whimsicott. But then the Thunderous should be able to survive. So Kyle's probably going to be keeping at least one of his Pokemon alive this turn, even if they get double targeted by the Thunderous gets double targeted by both the Pokemon, or the Groudon gets hit just by an Airstream, then shouldn't be able to lose the Thunderous, but especially not going to lose Pokemon if you're switching into a Sash Calyrex.
Yeah, exactly that. So I think Kyle's just wanting to go ahead and sort of use this Calyrex as a switching pivot, if you may, like a sort of sponge for damage, unless, of course, we will see a double up in that slot or any sort of a weather type move that could go ahead and deal chip damage at the end of it. But no, I don't think we're going to be seeing that, as the Zapdos is going ahead, getting that Dynamax form shaped up right now. Max Airstreams are probably going to be deployed from this ferocious Cantonian legendary Pokemon, as a Groudon goes for the Protect. It does not want to, take all of that damage right there. Play Rough, though, does go into the Calyrex slot, will be bringing it down to its Focus Sash, namely being that 1 HP remaining. Max Airstream double up. Ooh, that is a very good double up from Paul's side. Absolutely free to go ahead and get rid of one of Kyle's restricteds straight off the bat the moment that it did essentially switch in onto the battlefield. So in this situation, Jamie, I feel like having the speed advantage is so crucial. Kyle recognizes that, does have the Thunderous that can be switched in, maybe some Thunder Waves, or should I say a Thunder Wave can be input onto the Zacian, but you cannot stop this Zapdos.
You'd be able to Area Impulse it at least, but then you've got to make your choice. Do you Thunder Wave the Zacian and slow it down a bit, and maybe not even slow it down enough because of the Airstream boosts, or do you go for the Area Impulse into the Zapdos? Allow the Groudon most likely to be able to survive the attack from the Zapdos, especially if it's going for the Dynamax, like it looks like it is opting to go for. If you go for the Area Impulse into the Zapdos, that allows the Zapdos, the Zacian on Paul's side of the field to just launch off its attack very freely, and Behemoth Blades, if it launches off into the Groudon that is going for the Dynamax, that would still do a huge amount of damage, maybe even still be able to pick up the KO, and Play Rough would still do a huge amount of damage to the Thunderous, maybe pick up the knockout, and depending on how it is trained. So yeah, still very awkward position for Carl. They've got to choose Thunder Wave or Area Impulse. Both are good, but the fact that only one can be chosen does make this very awkward. The Dynamax on the Groudon, if it's able to launch off a Max Quake, that will KO the Zacian for sure, but then that leaves yourself open to the Kyogre that can just switch in at some point and then just click Water Spout. You do need to take care of the Thunderous to put a stop to that as well, to put a stop to any of the Thunderwaves or Eerie Impulses that can come out. So I wouldn't be surprised if at least one of the Pokemon on Kyle's side of the field is able to survive the turn. Thunderwave and Eerie Impulse, either one should ensure that, and opting for Eerie Impulse here.
It makes a lot of sense. Being able to drop that Zapdos's damage output to -2 of its special attack can really put in the work for Kyle's side right there to sponge up any sort of damage coming out from it. As we see the Zacian go for the Behemoth Blade, nearly picking up the KO there. Groudon just survives on a slither of health, remaining on 28 HP, does go ahead and recover a bit of that HP through its item Citrus Berry, but it's not enough to stop this Groudon from getting KO'd. Unfortunately, the moment the Groudon went ahead and tried to establish some dominance of sorts and try to flip this game around if possible, its momentum was absolutely knocked straight out of the park from that double up.
It probably should have preserved the Dynamax for the Gastrodon here, because you'd still take some reasonable damage from the Play Rough, but you wouldn't be taking double damage from the Behemoth Blade, so that would have allowed the Gastrodon to be able to take on the Zapdos a lot better. You could have gone for something like a Max Guard, stall out the final turn of the Airstream, and then you're opting for Hurricanes instead, so it wouldn't be doing as much damage. Would you have to switch in your Kyogre at some point to be able to get it as 100% accuracy rather than the half accuracy it has in the Sun? So yeah, not so good for Kyle here. Opting to go for the forfeit instead, seeing the writing on the wall, and Paul is going to take this first game.
Yeah, and something worth noting as well there, we saw that Kyle opted to bring the Gastrodon, right? We didn't see Kyogre from Paul's side. So Paul's saying, no, you know what? Although there could be a chance, of course, that the Kyogre was in the back, at least from what we visibly saw, Kyle's thinking, is it worth bringing the Gastrodon for game 2? Well, I wasn't able to get that sort of mileage that you would expect from it, because you had the Whimsicott, you had the Zapdos, and the Zacian, and they were enough to go ahead and nab that game 1 win. So do they have to switch up, get rid of the Gastrodon, and will this actually cause Paul to decide to bring Kyogre, expecting the Gastrodon not being brought?
It definitely still could have been brought in the back, because we didn't see the final Pokemon. I was quite surprised not to see the Kyogre on the turn the Zacian switched in, but the Zacian and the Zapdos was perfectly capable of cleaning up the game, so I didn't need to be doing that, but depends on whether the Kyogre was brought to that game. I would be very surprised if it wasn't. Usually when you're facing down the Groudon, you want to opt in for the Weather War. Even though you could be on the losing side of a Weather War, you still want to try and be able to combat it. But maybe without a Venusaur to make use of the Sun, the Kyogre isn't as necessary to be able to stop the Weather War, because the Charizard, it's probably not coming to a Kyogre matchup, so then it wouldn't be as necessary in that regard, but it would still be incredibly viable. And the other options would have been the Incineroar, which would still make a lot of sense against a Groudon and a Calyrex. Incineroar would absolutely make sense. Frotham probably not as useful. You could see that the Gastrodon just waited in the back, and the meme of seeing its friends die around it as it came in, and then wasn't able to secure the game. So Frotham probably not very necessary, and yeah, probably still the Kyogre in the back would be the option for Paul. You want to be making use of the tailwinds that come out. You want to make use of the Airstreams as well, because there was still a little bit awkward dancing around the Thunderous, so it was able to switch out of the taunt and come back in. But the fact that it can only choose between one of the support options at a time allowed the other Pokemon that wasn't being targeted by the prankster shenanigans from the Thunderous free reign of what it wanted it to do. And in that case, it was just KO the Groudon at that point. Probably did need to preserve the Gastrodon Dynamax. That could be still an option going into this game too.
Oh, it definitely can be. So we're just going to have to see how both of these trainers are going to lead. As we see Paul goes ahead with the same lead of that Whimsicott and shiny Zacian, whilst opposed to the Thunderous and Incineroar leads over on Kyle. So Kyle's adapted a bit here. Really good adaptation, I feel. You're able to go ahead and get an Intimidate off onto the Zacian, bring it down to neutral attack stages, whilst with the Thunderous, you could either choose to go for any sort of damage to maybe break the Focus Sash, or even get a cheeky paralysis on the Zacian if you can, get some chip damage, or you could just go for Taunt.
Yeah, it definitely frees up a bit more options for Kyle here, because you can just definitely fake out the Whimsicott because it is not carrying Protect. You can just go for a fake out Taunt if you wanted to, and that would allow your Thunderous options in the future to be able to deal with the prankster Pokemon, prankster attacks onto the opposing Zacian with the Thunder Waves and anything else like that. But nope, just switching straight out into the Groudon instead.
Yeah, switching straight out right there. You want to go ahead and gain momentum as you can. Maybe anticipating any sort of passive play from Paul's side there, but no, we see the play rough and the Moonblast double fairy double up onto the Groudon there. It does drop its special attack by one stage, but of course that will not matter at all. This is a physical Groudon. It does get a Citrus Berry recovery there, and we see a bit of a juggling play from Kyle, going to go ahead and get a parting shot onto the Whimsicott, interestingly enough, to get that pivot action going from the Incineroar to go straight into either Thundurus or this Gastrodon. So Kyle played a bit risky there, didn't he, Jamie? Able to essentially get that Groudon to take all of that damage, which may have seemed unnecessary.
That was a reasonably missed opportunity there to go for a Sun boosted Flare Blitz into the opposing Zacian. That would have almost certainly picked up the KO on the Zacian and taken care of it immediately. And that would have allowed just a paid switch into the Kyogre that would have just gone for a Water Spout at that point. But then you've got the Gastrodon waiting in the back that would be able to just switch in on that and not care too much. So little bit, maybe a potential missed opportunity there, because you've got the parting shot only on the Whimsicott instead as well. That's not going to matter too much in there with the stat drop. So you've effectively just repositioned a little bit and taken a reasonable amount of chip damage on the Groudon as well. That should be in range of a helping hand Behemoth Blade at this point, so you do need to be wary of that. So maybe it will be close with the earlier Intimidate that was landed on the Zacian. That could be coming out as well, but there is the helping hand.
Oh, this could be big right now. Kyle maybe getting his Gastrodon KO'd, but no, the Gastrodon's actually surviving. Does have an attack drop, which will not matter at all. Groudon, on the other hand, has just decided to go ahead and play with swords, essentially. Quite lethal, but quite deadly when it comes to its attack being raised to 2 stages as Ice Beam goes ahead and will deal more than half of Whimsicott's HP's worth. Of course, essentially breaking the Focus Sash, but also putting it within range for even a Precipice Blades +2 at this point.
It's a pretty nice sword stance from the Groudon. It does need to contend with the Zapdos and the Kyogre that's almost certainly waiting in the back, but that's going to be able to easily take care of the Whimsicott and the Zacian if it goes for Precipice Blades, or he'd just pick up the knockout on either Pokemon if it goes for a Max Quake instead. So yeah, quite a nice sword stance coming out from the Groudon. Didn't take any damage that turn. All the focus was on the opposing Gastrodon. It's taken a lot of damage with the Gastrodon as well. You'd assume that the Groudon still wants to be the Dynamax Pokemon because the Gastrodon has taken so much damage at this point, but you've taken a reasonable amount of chip damage on the 2 Pokemon you would want to go for the Dynamax with, so that is effectively using up some of the HP you would gain from that Dynamax. The Whimsicott just switching out here instead into the Zapdos, as the Gastrodon is also switching out into the Incineroar.
Oh, so Zapdos, of course, will potentially bait out a Max Quake into that slot. I don't see any reason Kyle going for that play. Precipice Blades just makes the most sense here, as you know, you don't lose anything other than maybe a helping hand Behemoth Blade into it. So that could have been Kyle's play here. Paul read into that completely, went for the Sacred Sword straight into that Incineroar slot right now, and wants to try to get that chip damage dealt slowly yet surely. And all of a sudden, we see Paul having the option to go for that Max Airstream once again, and any sort of damage move from this Zacian.
Yeah, everything's just being slowly chipped down by this Zacian at this point, and really just starting to put everything in range of the Water Spout, or even just Orange Impulse at this point from the Kyogre. You can just go for an Airstream with the Zapdos at this point, and you can pick up the knockout on the Incineroar. Probably not on the Dynamax Groudon if it does opt to go for that Dynamax, but then you've got to contend with the potential of the double up into the Groudon. You will have to go for a Fake Out into the Zacian to put a stop to that, and if you don't do that, then that's just going to leave yourself open to the attacks that could be coming out here. And yeah, the Zacian is going to be switching itself out of the Intimidates that have been occurring. The Whimsicott is going to be switching itself back in. It makes a lot of sense to get rid of the Intimidates, but Incineroar did not go for the Fake Out into the Zacian that turn. Instead, it did switch back into the Thundurus.
Very interesting play there, as in this situation I think it's all about a game of a chase or dare, essentially. You know, you're trying to, or chicken, damn it, I could have forgot my games. So in this scenario I think it's all about who is going to make the most optimal read, expecting what the opponent's going to go ahead and do. So Zapdos just doesn't want to play any games. It just goes for the max, or we don't know yet, but it could be going for the Max Airstream. It goes for the Dynamax regardless, and Kyle kind of has to go go for the Groudon Dynamax here if they're not anticipating the double up here. So in this scenario, it could have been a very tough play for Kyle to make. It could have just been a max guard, but they felt like they needed to try to get that pressure on, maybe have a max Rockfall into the Zapdos or max Quake into what was that Zacian slot.
Yeah, it's just going to be the Airstream coming out, since it wasn't into the Groudon that went for the Dynamax. That's a good amount of damage into the Thunderous, but that's given free reign of this Groudon to just go for a Rockfall into the opposing Zapdos. And with the earlier Swords Dance, especially with that extra bit of Life Orb chip onto the Zapdos as well, this should be picking up the knockout on the Zapdos.
Yeah, and it would make a lot of sense too, won't it? So Zapdos is out for the count, so Kyle got that turn so correctly. I think it's quite tough because Paul's been making some really good reads in general, so you just have to be able to catch up to the speed of your opponent and say, you know what, I know exactly what you're gonna do here. And they went for it, and Kyle did very well there. They didn't, they weren't afraid of that Zacian Zapdos double up, and they just went for the money. Essentially, they got it. Although the Kyogre is now on the field, but I think Kyle's very happy that their Thunderous is also on the field.
You got to contend with the taunt from the Whimsicott though, and Kyogre, it'd be very close if it's able to outspeed the Thunderous, because support Thunderous don't really invest anything into speed. Kyogres do, especially if they have Tailwind. They want to be able to outspeed Regielekis, and that usually means they'll outspeed a bulky Thunderous. So if the Whimsicott just goes for a taunt into the Thunderous, we could just be seeing a double knockout with the Water Spout coming out from the Kyogre. It does have to contend with the Gastrodon potentially switching in, but it'll just depend on how fast this Thunderous is, because it's a very safe taunt coming out from this Whimsicott into the Thunderous. Is it faster than the Kyogre?
Yeah, that is the question, as we're going to be seeing the Water Spout coming. Now the Kyogre is faster, picks up a double KO, Jamie, and all of a sudden, this game has been yet again thrown completely over on top of its head. Thunderous, Groudon are out for the count. There is no sun, only rain prevails, and Incineroar Gastrodon is now coming onto the field for Kyle. This is a very awkward spot for Kyle to be able to bring this back.
Yeah, it's effectively over at this point. You've got very safe plays on Paul's side of the field. You can Moonblast Ice Beam the Gastrodon, that will be a KO. If they go for a Fake Out into either Pokemon, doesn't really matter at this point, because you can only Ice Beam KO the Whimsicott, and if you get a Yawn into the Kyogre, you just switch straight out and Moonblast the Gastrodon again with your Whimsicott. So yeah, that really needs to go for a Thunderbolt there if you are faster with the Thunderous, but the fact that the Thunderous opted for Eerie Impulse surely indicates that it does underspeed the opposing Kyogre, or at least it's not training speed, and you would expect it to underspeed a Kyogre that is built on a Tailwind team. So yeah, the fact that the Thunderous didn't outspeed just left not many options for Kyle. They could have switched into the Gastrodon and got a Storm Drain boost, but because it's taken so much damage from that earlier play rough, even if it does that and you keep the Thunderous, doesn't particularly matter, because the Thunderous would just get taunted again. You just go for an Ice Beam again into the Gastrodon. Doesn't matter that it's got a special attack boost, because Earth Power won't do too much to the opposing Kyogre. So yeah, protecting from any Fake Outs or Yawns that can come out. Kyogre then just gets to click Water Spout, and then you'll just click Play Rough at some point, and maybe even not then, because the two Moonblasts would be able to pick up the knockout on the opposing Gastrodon, and even just stop any Yawns with that taunt as well.
Yeah, exactly that. So the Gastrodon's completely shut down right now. It can't do much. Like you mentioned, Jamie, the Yawn did try to come out from the Gastrodon, and it's just out of options. Honestly, it doesn't have much else it can do. Sure, it could just go for on the offensive, but what value are you going to get out of that in the following turns? And as a result of that, we are going to be seeing Kyle go ahead and click the forfeit button. As a result, ending their run in this Victory Road paired with GG Tour Series 12 Challenge Tournament, and Paul Ruiz goes straight to the finals.
Yeah, very impressive showing there. Just one turn of Dynamax was all that was needed from the Zapdos, and then Kyogre just came in and did what it just does best, clicks Water Spout at full HP, and ends the game immediately. So yeah, Paul is going to be moving on to the finals. We were able to feature quite a few games of Kyle, so it was a very cool team. Calyrex Groudon was not on my radar in the slightest as a restricted pair that would be doing well in this tournament, and managed to make top 4, so a very impressive showing. But it is going to be at least Zacian and Kyogre that is making it to the finals.
No surprises there, Jamie. I feel that obviously are our thoughts, and I'm pretty sure a lot of people in chat's thoughts as well. You just have such a very good synergy going on with those two restricteds, and then as long as you're able to pair them up quite well and fill in all of the gaps, you know, get some speed control, have some sort of damage control if you can, you're able to just run away with games, and that's essentially what we saw from Paul. Having Zapdos is so crucial, so good. I love that Pokemon because it is completely immune to any sort of Thunder Wave shenanigans that you would expect, both from Thundurus and Incarnate, as we saw in this best of 3 matchup, whilst also those Grimmsnarls that we've seen quite a few times already on today's stream. So really cool Pokemon, Life Orb boosted, max airstreams, good luck stopping it when it gains momentum on you and you can't turn it around and you don't have, let's say, Trick Room.
Yeah, so really good showing there, and we will be seeing that in the final. We will be cutting to a short break, and we will be back shortly with the second semi-final to determine who is going to be facing Paul Ruiz in the final.